All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into a completely fascinating biological framework used by St. Paul's Kogarah to map organizational growth. Whether you're leading a community, building a business, or managing a large team, figuring out the actual measurable health of an organization is incredibly difficult. Most groups just look at raw attendance, or profit margins, or maybe how much coffee gets consumed on a Sunday morning. But the strategic documents from St. Paul's take a radically different approach. They use a literal medical and anatomical metaphor to diagnose their systems. So let's dive into this. Okay, let's take a quick look at our medical chart of an agenda for today. We'll start with the anatomy of a church, move into the heartbeat, take a look at the lungs, check their vital signs for 2026, and finish up with a health checkup. Section 1, Anatomy of a Healthy Church. Now, to really grasp their overarching strategy, we first have to see how this community fundamentally defines the concept of health. They don't define it by static numbers or just how many people happen to show up on a Sunday. Instead, they define it by constant biological rhythm and circulation. They describe a healthy church as an active body, a house of prayer that literally lives and breathes the gospel. In this framework, health is only truly visible when internal retention and external outreach are working together simultaneously in a continuous, unbroken loop. Section 2, the heartbeat. Let's look at the cardiovascular system. In their framework, this represents their internal ministry, which they call glorify. Think about a human heart. It has different chambers to pump oxygen effectively, right? Well, the glorify ministry actually uses two primary services as the two chambers of its heart. On the left, you have the 915 English congregation, and on the right, the Chinese language parallel service. Both of these chambers are pumping life, which they define as the living word and corporate worship, through the entire body at the exact same time. It's one unified body, but it functions through distinct, specialized chambers. And here is where it gets super interesting. The crucial goal here is what medical professionals call total perfusion. For an organ to survive, oxygenated blood literally has to reach every single cell. In this strategy, the cells are the different demographics within the community. We're talking KOG many and primary programs for the kids, all the way up through the youth, KOG men, KOG women, and couples fellowships. The absolute mandate here is that 0 age groups are left underperfused, because if a demographic isn't receiving the flow of the word and engaging in the community, that part of the body is at serious risk. Plus, a healthy cardiovascular system naturally produces physical warmth. The leadership actually tracks this as their fellowship temperature. High health means there's active engagement, shared prayer, and a genuinely welcoming atmosphere that integrates people. They actively design their infrastructure to raise this temperature, using shared meals like their Sunday dish, and deliberate follow-ups just to make sure that warmth reaches absolutely everyone. Section 3, the lungs. Now, a heart is totally useless without lungs to supply the oxygen. And that brings us to their external ministry, known as GO, which acts as the respiratory system. Here we see the biological duality of breathing. Inhaling is all about drawing fresh life from the outside world, welcoming strangers, first contacts, and newcomers. The absolute rule is that no one remains unknown. Exhaling, on the flip side, is how the church breathes back out into the world. This means sending out missionaries, teachers, and planters. It also involves promotion, which they actually describe as the muscle that keeps the breath moving outward. Without promotion, the lungs just deflate, and the influx of new contacts dries up completely. There's a quote directly from their internal source material that just hits the nail on the head. A body that stops breathing, stops living. A church that stops going, stops growing. They constantly remind their teams that every single breath the church takes is for the sake of those not yet inside the congregation. It is such a powerful framing device. It turns a regular, everyday welcoming team into a vital, life-sustaining biological function. To ensure that inhalation is smooth and completely unobstructed, they've built a remarkably rigorous welcoming infrastructure. We're not just talking about a casual greeting at the door. They have a welcome tent, a designated welcomers team, new friends leads who ensure people are connected by language and demographic, and even host family seating so literally nobody sits alone. They state explicitly that welcoming is an entire culture, not just a chore on a roster. Just as every cell participates in respiration, every member is expected to own the welcome. Section 4, Vital Signs for 2026. So, an anatomical metaphor is incredibly useful for visualizing how things operate. But how does this body actually measure its physical fitness? Well, take a look at that number right there, 75. That is their primary cardiovascular and respiratory target. 75 households gathering by December 2026. They aren't just crossing their fingers and aiming for a vague sense of growth. This target represents the visible, measurable fruit of these biological systems working perfectly together. It proves they are retaining current members while successfully integrating an exact volume of newcomers. And how do they plan to hit those vital signs? Through a personal promotion engine they call the 3-2-1-0 framework. This asks every single member to act as the respiratory system in their daily lives. It goes like this: pray for 3 people, connect with 2 people, invite 1 person with 0 excuses. They realize that no centralized program can ever replace a simple member-to-friend invitation. This engine is exactly what creates that inhalation we talked about earlier. Section 5, the monthly health checkup. Having all these biological systems in place on paper is awesome, but how do they ensure these organs don't fail in reality? They run a strict, replicable, monthly operational health checkup. First, leadership literally walks through their church management system pipeline. Second, they ruthlessly track their follow-up metrics. Their goal is 100% of newcomers contacted within 48 hours. And third, they actively hunt for stuck people. If someone came once but vanished, or finished a course but didn't join a group, they don't just sigh sympathetically. They assign a specific, named action to a specific team leader to get that person unstuck. And this really brilliantly illustrates their wider accountability. On a termly basis, every single ministry is evaluated through 5 specific lenses: prayer, cost, teams, targets, and fruit. The source documentation is actually remarkably blunt here. If an organ isn't producing measurable fruit under these lenses, it must be re-aimed or make way. You just can't let a failing system drain energy from the broader body. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider your own community, team, or business. Are you tracking your actual vital signs, or just looking at vanity metrics? Do you have an internal heartbeat that retains and cares for your people, paired with healthy lungs that are continuously bringing in fresh life? A body only truly thrives when circulation and respiration work together perfectly. Take a close look at your own checkup rhythms and ask yourself, is your organization truly living and breathing? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.